Last week, I closed my message with the statement that once the truth is known, it can never be unknown. And that knowing the truth changes us forever. Now, I know this raised some issues last week, as there are those who say that their truth about a variety of things is out there, and people just won't accept it. They're right. I think each of us can name at least one truth that we hold that we know someone who will disavow. So, what then is truth? Now, you all know I love using movies to help tell our story. So, in the movie Return of the Jedi, Luke confronts Obi-Wan after learning that his father is not dead, as he had been told, but is instead Darth Vader. When asked why he was told otherwise, Obi-Wan tells Luke he didn't lie to him. He just told the truth from a certain point of view. He goes on to say that truths we cling to depend greatly on our point of view. That line, truths we cling to greatly depend on our point of view, has always resonated with me. I guess that's because truths we hold really are the results, often, of the lives we live. For instance, in this country, we profess a belief that all are created equal, that is a truth. And as such, each of us has the same inalienable rights as the other. However, had we grown up in the Middle East, or the African tribal culture of the African continent, or maybe the hierarchical structure society of the Middle Ages, or even the tribal culture of Native Americans earlier in this country, I doubt we would hold that same view of individual equality. Because truth, as we know it, can be dependent upon things beyond our understanding or control. And as such, some would argue that truth then evolves over time as situations change. I would argue that it is not truth that evolves, but instead our understanding of it. Because truths, if they are true, exist independent of our understanding of them. For instance, many would say cold is the opposite of hot. Light is the opposite of darkness. But the truth is, they are not opposites, just different known levels of one another. Cold is actually described as the total absence of heat. Now, we say it gets cold when that temperature reaches a point where we become uncomfortable. And each of us becomes uncomfortable at a different point. So our truth, our definition of cold, changes based on our point of view, our individual levels of comfort. However, scientifically, cold, or that total absence of heat, occurs at 0 degrees Kelvin, minus 459 degrees Fahrenheit. So there's a wide range of what each of us calls cold. Likewise, darkness is the point at which light waves no longer can measurably reach. Just as cold is different for each of us, our eyes sense cold differently. Darkness differently. And as humans, it becomes dark to us long before darkness truly exists. What may be dark to us is not dark to some other species, and definitely not dark compared to the measuring capability of some of our computers. So, where am I going with this science lesson today? I guess my point is truth is broader and more inclusive than we are able to comprehend. A point Paul is trying to make in his letter of Acts, or his Acts in Acts. That doesn't make sense, does it? Luke wrote Acts, but we're talking about Paul speaking in Acts. There we go. Thank you, Jim. Israel long thought that God was their God, and as such, maybe God over all, but God was theirs alone. And the truth, Paul says, is that God is God. And therefore, since God is God, God is the God of all, both Jew and Gentile. The whole of humanity as they understood it in those days. And whether we accept that as truth or not, Paul says the truth is God is God. And that is the truth. And it exists independent of our understanding of how or why. This view of truth is also found in Webster's Online Dictionary. Webster says that truth is a state of being, a fact. That it is the body of real things, events, or facts. It is an actuality, it says. And that it is the property of being in accord with fact or reality. It exists because it's true. Interestingly, the last definition it gives of truth is one word: God. This idea of God as truth is not a stretch. In John's gospel account, there are several times when the terms God and truth are used as parallel terms. He's probably most clear when he talks about Jesus addressing the disciples during the Last Supper. When Jesus says that when the Spirit of truth comes, he will lead you into all truth. The Spirit of truth, we learn, is the same Spirit we know as the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of God. And that it is the same Spirit we hear descend upon Jesus in our gospel reading at his baptism. And that through our baptism we acknowledge dwells within each and every one of us. Just as cold and hot, light and darkness are interconnected, even dependent on the other for its existence, Paul says we too are interconnected, dependent upon one another through the same Spirit that dwells in each of us. The Spirit that dwells in you and me. In fact, all of humanity is interconnected. In those days, they said Jew and Gentile to say this. Today, we would say Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, Jew, even atheists are all interconnected in and through the Holy Spirit. But we're not just connected to one another. The Spirit also connects us to God. As such, no person is beyond the care and concern of God, because in the readings we hear, God shows no partiality. And we know this because Jesus did not die for the Jews alone, but that all might know salvation. So that all might know the relationship they once enjoyed with God in the beginning, before humanity's pride disconnected us from God and from one another. And not just us, though. all of humanity too. If we must cling to a truth, let it be this, and I paraphrase Paul: God is God, and we are not. In seeking this truth, we put all other truths in perspective, and we find that what binds us together is stronger than what seeks to tear us apart. Amen.